Hello and welcome to Prism of Value, where we talk about how to express your value so that others see it, appreciate it, and can act on it. And I'm very excited today to have as my guest Phillippe Lanier, who is principal of a real estate, technology, and lifestyle company called EastBanc, and delighted to have him here to talk about some of the challenges in terms of navigating through the pandemic and building a really great company and multifaceted company that has adapted to the needs of the market. So welcome, Philippe. And where are you today? Are you in the States?
Yeah, I'm in Washington, D.C., where my office is based. I didn't make it out of my house this morning. Every day it's a fight to see if I can get it out of the door before the first meeting starts. And the office is only, 5 minutes away. So today I stuck to the home office.
Well, the reason I asked is because I know that you're a global company. So I know that you could be found in many parts of the world on any given day. So let's start by telling a little bit about your company and describe a little bit about EastBanc and what it does.
Sure. EastBanc is essentially a first and a half generation family business. It was started by my father, who's still very, very active in the company. He started it in 1987. Nearly everybody in my family contributes in one way or the other. My older sister, who is been living in Moscow now for 14 years, she married a Russian. Her kids have, gone past their teens, and she came back and started working with the company about 5 years ago and works running all of our marketing. My mother's involved. My wife is involved in some of our retail. And my little sister, while not directly involved, is still finishing an architecture and real estate degree in Columbia. Will in any given year work on one project or another. So, we're all in.
That's amazing. And how does that affect, you think, having a family-run company in terms of how well you all communicate? Does that help or hurt?
We're lucky. We get along well. I hear lots of stories of other families that are a little bit more challenged. We're also, again, just the second generation in taking over. So there's less spread of personalities and lifestyles. We're still pretty clustered and watch the whole company grow. We all have a slightly different style, and some of the people that work with us have to have some patience because everybody comes into the room in a different week with a different angle. But since we communicate well, we get along, we get it done.
Yeah. So and talk a little bit about the because you have an interesting mix of businesses, and talk a little bit about that and how they reinforce each other or not.
So my father is, the businesses we have in some ways are a virtual map of his brain. They're extensions of different passions that he had along his career, and he is, the typical true entrepreneur. He sees an opportunity where others see failure and keeps pushing through it, and then tries to succeed in that vein. If you can run kind of a central theme through all the things that he started in life, there's a theme of longevity and a focus on great design, and the two are kind of tied. We're not somebody that manufactures something to sell it. We try to keep on to the things that we've built, and so we do have a lot of vision and long-term perspective in the things we invest our energy into. And when you build something new you want to keep, you try to build it well. And then the other thing that threads through everything we do is a sense of community, because everything that we build is in some ways connected to each other through the cycle of time and benefits from each other. So it builds and builds and builds. So we have a sense of community, a sense of design, a sense of family. And then I guess one other useful component is, because the stuff that we do is so diversified, the only way to really successfully manage it is to let go a little bit and have individuals within each silo take some of the leadership burden, own a little bit of the company, feel the benefit of the hours that they invest in it. So in some ways, it's a family office that sits on top of a series of investments, but is still operationally active in each of those investments in partnership with the employees that work in that particular company.
Mm-hmm. And how many employees do you have in total?
So we have, you said we spread across, our offices span from, on the technology side, we have offices in Siberia, which I just came back from 2 weeks ago. We have offices in Portugal, both on the real estate and the technology side. We used to have an office in the UAE. We shut that down about 8 years ago. And then the office here in DC. Across all of those offices combined, I would say we're approximately 600, something like that.
Wow. Yeah. And so how do you, one of the themes you just talked about was about connection, right? And the connectivity. How do you maintain that connection among the 600 people so that they understand kind of what the company's all about, your family's values, so that they, by extension, can live those values every day as they transact the various business that they are responsible for?
It's a good question. It's not easy. We could always do better. You kind of feel like you're playing a game of whack-a-mole where you keep reminding yourself that you forgot to do something on one part of the spectrum, and you focus energy on that one, and then you shift back, and life is a series of imperfections. And I think that's one of the things that I've been focused on the last 8 years is how do I improve the management structures within all of those companies to free up our own time so that we can, focus on some of these soft investments that you want to make to help everybody feel connected.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that since the pandemic, those softer aspects have become more important, less important?
Yeah,
same?
I'd say that they're critical. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm not a subscriber to the world going remote forever. I do very much believe on in-person collaboration. I think it's essential to happiness. I think it's essential to sustaining career growth and to understanding where everybody's coming from culturally. And so a company like ours that has so many different cultures, we definitely have to make sure that our various employees recognize that they're going to come back to that world at some point. But we are sensitive to everyone's own particular journey and how comfortable they are in their bubble and their sense of safety. So we've adjusted to the remote work tools that are out there, and very much are focused on adding investments to our company in the years to come that help tie the remote office to the home office to the understanding of the cultural vision and trajectory of the company, and making people feel part of the whole. Because if you don't do that, an individual drifts so far away from the center of what agency they're working for, they begin to wonder why they're doing it in the first place. And it's an important question to ask. You really should enjoy your work. You're better at it when you enjoy it. And if you look up and realize that you're not having a good time, then you begin to look elsewhere. And in this world where everything's drifting away from the center, that can take larger and larger organizations and really deconstruct them.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you have found to keep that energy, keep that positive energy and that connection to the whole? Are there things that you have done differently during the pandemic, or things that you were doing but you're doing more of? How do you manage that?
I think we're taking topics that are not necessarily new, that are best practices in running a business, and taking them much more seriously and being much more aggressive about executing on them. So some of the things that I'm focused on as an example is decentralizing management, making sure that you're not limiting the decisions only at the top, but empowering everybody along the way to recognize how to make decisions, to set some sort of structure of goals so they know how to measure themselves and the people underneath them to those decisions. And then things happen faster because we're in such a disruptive and dynamic world. If you don't have an infrastructure that can adapt rapidly, then you're constantly chasing bad decisions. So that's part of it, and that involves a degree of training and teaching everybody who you've empowered to make decisions that part of good decision making is listening as much as speaking. And so once you empower people throughout the organization to listen, you hear what's going wrong or where you need particular focus. So that's one of the tools. I think making sure that you have a human resource infrastructure where people know that part of their job is to think about the culture and the team, that they are working to remind everyone to recognize the success of their team and other people in the company, to explain to them why what they've done is critical to the whole, to introduce events, newsletters, communication, just constant reminders that they are seen and that they contribute value to the whole effort.
So there isn't a magic bullet. It's an ongoing, continuous kind of tending of the culture garden, if you will.
It is. I think an interesting analogy, if you really want to look at things from a completely different light, if you take the time to study kind of medieval society, so city-states, kings, vassals, all of that. In theory, the leader of the state was put in power, by the church, by God, by the citizens. It wasn't really a democratic process, right? In some ways, it was hereditary. They just happened to be in power. That doesn't mean that everyone simply does what they say. It's the reverse. If you really look at it, the good leaders were the ones that recognized that they were born into servitude, and they were really working on behalf of the people, and that they were being trained from birth on how to do that well. So I think that's the same way when you lead a company. What I say many times to my technology company specifically, I work for them and they are my customers, and they work for our clients, and so my focus is on them and their focus is on the people we do work for, and somehow that should all work.
Yeah, that's really powerful. When when we talked before, you mentioned that the challenges of sort of navigating through the pandemic, and again now we're hearing about more variants and so on. What have you learned from what your company and your employees have been through in the last 18 months to 2 years that is going to guide you forward? What were some of the positive things that you learned and some of the things that were challenges or maybe continue to be challenges?
I'm trying to figure out how to answer that in a kind of a unique fashion. You have to be paranoid at the top, right? So you have to run your company acknowledging that there is more risk ahead and not the way around. But at the same time, you can't just take that paranoia and that apprehension and spread it to your company. You also have to inspire confidence. So how do you do both? So from the very beginning, we were extremely transparent. We made sure that we took our responsibility to our team to heart, made sure that everybody was aware of what benefits were allocated to them by law in the particular country that they were working in. So it's a little bit different in Portugal than it was in the States, as it was in Russia. that they were perfectly well advised onto their health without actually becoming their doctors. For instance, not telling them how to heal themselves, but making sure that they all knew that they had access to a doctor and communicating with their doctors regularly, so that the advice was coming from the right place. And constantly checking in to see who was surviving that challenge or not, who was overworking themselves, who was getting lost in the midst, and being sensitive to why they were struggling or succeeding. So again, the company starts with the team, so you really have to care about the team and make sure that you're doing that, and be honest with them when you face challenges. For instance, I'm gonna have our Christmas party this Friday. At least for the real estate company, it's doing a lot tougher than the technology one, and be quite clear that this year was even tougher than last, even though things in some ways are getting better, because in this year we don't have the financial support of the government, and last year we did take assistance from the PPP program, which was very helpful. And despite the fact that this was a tougher year, I do think that we've all made every decision correctly, that we have succeeded where we could succeed, and we're positioned to do as well as we can next year. So I guess all of it combined is just good communication.
Yeah. And that I think it's something that people often, talk about, but it has to be intentional and it has to be frequent. You can't it's not a one and done. So if you found that you are spending more time communicating these days than you were before, partially because things are remote, I don't know.
I mean, I spent a lot of time communicating throughout last year. I think I took the pedal off the gas this year, and didn't communicate with everybody directly, but made sure that I was checking in with certain leaders at the company and how their team was doing, so I could get a pulse on everybody. I think this is, a badge of success for our company. I can't say whether it's universal or not, but almost universally within our employees, they're overworked. And not because we're pushing them too hard, because they're pushing themselves and they want to work hard for us. And also because they haven't, even now, a year and a half, 2 years later, they haven't figured out how to separate their home desk from their kitchen. And so we're constantly reminding employees that they don't need to, grab their phone at 1 o'clock in the morning and answer emails because they can't sleep, that they really do need to find some distance. I think a particular challenge that I faced the last 3 months that I suspect many business leaders face is that, I'm exhausted. And I certainly wake up plenty of days wondering, why do I keep doing it? And how do I come into the office with enthusiasm? Not that we're losing, but it is really just everything feels like an absolute struggle and fight. Nothing is coming easy at all. So it's tiring. And if I can't even figure out how to come into the office with my own enthusiasm, what exactly am I doing that's inspiring everyone else to do the same? Other than just going to them and says, guys, you didn't take the vacation I told you to take. Why didn't you do it? And the answer is because everywhere I want to go is expensive, so I don't feel like it's the right time. And so I just took a few days off on the weekend, which didn't really do the trick. So, I mean, that's my challenge right now, is that if I can't solve it for myself, how do I even, lead other people to a more, a better work-life balance?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have the same problem. I took 5 days off last week, and I had to fight myself not to go to the computer and do work. It was kind of sad, but I just felt like, and I was largely successful, but that separation is often really hard.
I understand it. I can take my own filter and assume that many people are the same. Even today, a lot of our freedoms are taken away from us. And in order to de-victimize yourself, you want to do something. You want to counteract it and execute. And if you're not executing every minute, then you're standing still, and then you're reminded that your freedoms are taken away. So it's this cycle that gets you to just constantly overwork.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you offer other leaders in terms of how to, as we moving forward? What are some, maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would offer somebody else that might be starting a company, someone else that is moving up into a leadership role? What advice would you offer them?
Well, I think, again, if you start with the individual in your company, you have to recognize that everybody is human and they're all going through their own life journey, and it is entirely normal, healthy, and I would encourage people who've been working long in one certain arena or one certain direction, if they want to take a retrospective and consider doing something different in life, or tweaking things, or going to their employer and demanding, a change of pace or a change of direction. Now's as good a time as any. And at least here in America, the good news is that we're in a tight job market. And so if somebody does actually want to change pace, there's options. There are options. And as a leader, I really don't want anybody working on my team that isn't suited to the job they're working on or isn't enjoying the job they're working on. So for so many different reasons, this is a period of volatility in human capital. And because it's such a tight labor market, if you do happen to lose someone who's been working with you for a while, or even if they're not, no longer suited to the job they were working on, it's very difficult to replace that person. So the advice would be, encourage your employees to consciously decide to do what they're doing so they do it well, and make sure that you budget for the cost of changing the structure of your employee base, because it's inevitable. And you want to be able to spend the time and money to hunt around and find the people who intentionally do want that position that has been vacant. So you're doing it once, and that introduction of a new person through this world of in-person and remote is a successful one, that it really is a good fit for the team.
Yeah. And that's so important, because from other things that I've read about you and things that you've said about how important people are to your brand, that your brand is, in a sense, the people who work with you. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, it's a family. I don't want to ding somebody else, but I recently read a book written by some of the leaders at Netflix, and they are in such a growth trajectory and have such a mission that they take some of this philosophy to the extreme, and to the point where they've gone through periods and paid people to quit. And if somebody, doesn't really fit the job and is dragging down the team, that person is unlikely to stay in that position and is going to be encouraged to go and find a job elsewhere. They're not so mercenary that they run around and, firing everybody that makes a mistake, but they're constantly trying to optimize their team and say that they're willing to pay top salary to ensure that that's the case. In a family business, you can't really take that approach. But it's a nuance. There are some people on the team that are hungrier than others, but those people that maybe aren't succeeding as well as their desk mate, our approach is to encourage them to do better and to figure out why it is they're not succeeding, and is it more training, or is it that they're doing the wrong job and they should shift to another role? We always tell people when we hire them that if they want a job here for life, that's what we want too. And I would say the average tenure of people at our company amongst all of our companies is more than 15 years.
Wow.
That even with the developers, which is remarkable when you're talking about a development shop, for the technology developers, the programmers. So, there's a balance between how to do that without, making a decision that is so egregious that you really are pulling down a team. If somebody is just not delivering for a long period of time, then that's really, poisonous and destroys culture. The difference, going to the heart of your question, is I can do that with a company of 600 that is between 4 or 5 different sub companies. if I was running a business of 2,000 or 5,000, those are the companies that are really challenged today. If you take technology company X in California of any considerable size that has had to encourage an entirely remote policy probably through next summer, and then you combine that with the extremely aggressive recruiting practices that are going on and the headhunters that are going wild, that's the biggest challenge of all, and how to keep a culture together. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job if you're keeping people for more than 10 years in this market. That's pretty good. And I think sounds like the idea of being a family company and having that sort of the values and ethos carried throughout the company is a big factor in creating that culture.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah. Last question. So I know we've talked about some challenges, but what gives you hope and optimism these days? There's got to be something.
It's slim pickings. Hope and optimism. It's not me, right? There are a lot of people involved. We do generally have the support of everyone around us, so we know we're doing something right. I happen to think, while we're in lots of different countries and cities, the heart is in Washington, and at least from a real estate perspective, people are quite down on Washington right now because they think the federal government is shrinking and everyone's working from home forever. But I think Washington, D.C. is just an incredible place to be in this time, because so much of the decisions are being made here on how to structurally support this malaise, and so much of the money is being printed here on what is still the world's global currency. So it's a critical place. So I'm happy that I'm in someplace central, that I know I'm part of the story. I'm happy that I'm working with people that love to work with me. I'm happy that my family's involved, so I don't have to run around the world chasing them. So there's a lot to be happy for. I really do wish that it would get a little easier. It's just a challenge, but we're not quitters. And so I'll know that if we keep pushing through, we'll end up somewhere great.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Philippe, thank you so much for talking with us today, and a lot of good insights. And I know that better times are ahead at some point. At least I hope so.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Thanks, Liz.